Our grease is one of my favorite products. It's the easiest to show, and there's just nothing even comparable out there. This is Vermeer's best grease. It's also Co-op blue, you can call it. It's kind of all looks the same. And it's not an inexpensive grease by any means. The way this works is you hear the friction, and this tells us how much load I have on it. I'm running a little over 6 amp. I'm up to 7 amp. I got plenty. I'm throwing grease off, but look at the smoke rolling at 7 amp. Well, our protection is already broken down at 7 amp. And
how many foot-pounds of torque?
Well, 7 amp, we're at 200, and we're smoking. So foot-pounds of torque was basically 200.
Smell it.
And you can smell it. And what I like about it is you can all come up here if you want. That's hot. But take a look at this bearing. If you see, there's absolutely no grease. It has gone right down.
Wow.
Right down
Iron
to the metal. Iron. 250 pounds of torque. I'm being generous with it, probably closer to 200. Okay, what I'm going to do, you don't normally change bearings when you change grease, so I'm just going to put some of our grease on here. Our grease, it's a synthetic parasynthetic oil blend with a moly additive. And the moly, I guess, would be in an extended wear, like he was talking. You can hear it quiet down, or you should. There's 200 foot-pounds, there's 250 foot-pounds, and we're actually at 6 amp. Another one was smoking over 7 amp. There's 300 foot-pounds. Here's the foot-pounds right here. There's 400. There's 500. We're getting a little smoke if you look real close. There's 600 foot-pounds, foot-inches, and we're barely over 6 amp. But anyway, he got his grease. I said, that's pretty good. And gobbed that up good. And I says, got another test for you. And I put my grease on here and came over to him and I says, call this a splat test. You want to hold this hammer? Wait a minute, I'll do it. But
It's awesome.
a little bounced up off the hammer and came down, but did you see it splat? And you got to remember how warm it is today too. If it's going flat, it'll splat. But this has no collars or anything holding it in like a bearing would, no seals. And it's not going anywhere. Well, I went and put some of his grease on it, and he did that. I backed clear up, and he had this green circle right across his belly. He said, well, my grease was almost as good.
Well, the benefit there would be in loaders, or anywhere where you have a shock goes back and forth.
U-joints.
Or U-joints.
U-joints have a lot of load shock. And
Well, that story is that it clings.
but I'm going to show you a little bit on hydraulic oil. This is just regular hydraulic oil. Put it in here because I didn't want to bring a 5-gallon bucket out.
Which one is that?
This is Co-op oil. A lot of people use it, I'm sure. Okay, here's Hey Jim, could you find Enduro? Oh, here it is. Is there a strip in there? There's 150 pounds. There's 200, we're up to 7. 250, we're smoking and it's squealing, and we're at 8 amps. So it's pulling a load at 8. We've got a regular hydraulic oil, but this additive is...
What are the amps actually showing?
It was showing 8 right there.
But what does that signify?
It signifies how much friction we're putting on it. This shows me how much pressure I'm putting on it, but this is showing me how much friction, how much power it's taking to pull it. The more amperage you have, why, the harder that engine's working. I love this stuff. I'm going to try to get 3 drops in it. Enduro. I never had a hydraulic system on my tractor chatter, but I was talking to a guy out of John Deere, and he claimed it cut the chatter on his. He had an older 4020, and this stuff is very cheap when you put it in 16 gallon of oil. But I know the farmers figure that it's less than a gallon of oil is what they figure by the time they do everything. It's one of the cheapest insurances they have. We'll listen to it. I think it's getting quieter, isn't it? Okay, we're at 100 foot inches. There's 200 foot inches right there. That's where the other one was smoking. We hit 8 amp. Right now we're at 6 amp. There's 300 foot inches. There's 400. There's 500 foot inches, and we're still at 6 amp. Same thing we did with Enduro, and the hydraulic oil says the same for automatic transmission fluid. Again, it's thin. There's not many protective qualities on it. This is just regular Amoco automatic transmission fluid. It's kind of thin like water. And probably the weakest part of our cars in this day and age now is the transmissions. They've lightened them up, and the less oil they put in them, why, the lighter they are, there's less case, less material they haul around, and everything's mile per gallon. And we have a problem with overheating a lot of our transmissions in this anymore. This is Translast, is what I'm going to add to it here in a little bit. And that's just straight transmission fluid right now. There's 200 foot inches, and you can see the smoke rolling, and we're popping 8, and we're at 200 foot inches. So it's pretty weak stuff. Again, I'm going to try to get 3 drops. Well, that may be just 2, but we'll listen for it and see what happens. Seems like I got a little quieter. There's 200 foot inches. I may have to get that 3rd drop pretty quick. There's 250. There's 300 foot inches. And we haven't gone up a bit. We're still at 6 amp.
Pressure beats overall on transmission.
There's 400 foot inches. There's 450. 500. There's 550 inches. This is the same thing. I tightened my bearing up in case I was getting a little chatter. There's 600 foot inches. That's with our Translast. And I'm just sitting there, and it's at 6, and you don't even really see it smoke. And in all honesty, I put 2 drops in there, and normally I shoot for 3. So that's probably one of the first things I'd tell people to put in their cars. You conklinize your Suburban.
When I got that Suburban, I drove it 2,500 miles just to get a baseline on mileage, and I was getting 12 and a half. Just, I mean, in town, out of town, didn't seem to make much difference. And I took it into Eric Janke up at Janke Diesel Repair and had him switch out everything, bumper to bumper. Transmission, differentials, the real wheel bearings you could repack, you repacked with Rhino, you know, end to end. And then I put in a pint of 4-power. And I usually expect when I put in 4-power that the mileage is probably going to drop that first tank full because it's cleaning the system. And I got on the road and I went from Omaha to Chicago and checked my mileage and I got 14.78. I checked it just the other day, put 400 and some miles on a part of a tank of gas, drove from Kansas City to St. Louis and back to Kansas City, and I filled up, topped it off, couldn't get another drop in it, and I got 16.365. So it's getting consistent. 12 and a half before. So I went from 12 and a half to 16, you know, typically, that's what I'm getting. And I mean, that was some in and out of town, mostly that was highway miles. But
That was putting fuel mate in at the same time.
that was putting in fuel mate too, yep. And so with fuel mate and with the rest of the products, I went from 12 and a half to 16. And again, that's at 75, 80 mile an hour, you know, most of the time. So
Run a Convoy 1540.
I run 1540 to high TBN oil is what I use, yeah. But it's, you know, and it basically doesn't use any oil. It's 75,000 miles on it.
Okay, Rotella T. That's what most over-the-road truck drivers buy. The reason why is because it's at every truck stop.
Use it for what now?
Yeah.
Engines on diesels
15 W40 motor oil is what he's got.
Biggest seller.
Oh, okay.
and so people use it a lot. It's a pretty decent oil. We're up to 200, 250, and we're smoking. We're over 7. There's 300, and then we're beginning to spike. So we got about 300 foot-inches out of it. Okay, this is straight Quaker State. There's 100 foot-inches. 200, we're getting a little smoke. 250, quite a bit of smoke. 300, and we hit 8 at 300. Again, I'm going to shoot for the magic 3 drops. I think it's beginning to work. Okay, 250, right, is where it went to. There's 250. I think that one went to 3 when I took it to 8. So there's 3, and we're at 6 amps. And that's where we're getting increased fuel economy, is we don't have that. There's 400. There's 500. $5.50, and we hit, what, 6.5, I think, at $5.50.
Was that Convoy 1540 that you just put?
Convoy 1540, 15,000 miles. The reason it's dirty is it came out of an engine with about 210,000 miles on it, something like that.
Diesel engine.
Diesel engine. No, I think it had 202,000. I don't recall for sure. It's beginning to see. So there's 300. That's where the Rotella was. There's 400. There's 450. There's 500. There's 600. Now what I like to do, that's compared to 300, but what I like to do is I can sit here and it's going to start smoking. I got 250 foot-inches on it. Well, there's the 300 that Rotella T took. But I'll sit here and I can probably talk for 5 minutes and it's not going to burn through. It is going to just sit there. It's going to smoke. We don't have any cooling on here whatsoever. And so the oil is going to get hot. But what this tells me is if I have oil problems, I got time to pull over the side of the road and not buy a new engine. And look, 6 amp. We're sitting here. There's 4. Look how long. That 6 amp, it's still down there. There's 500 foot inches. There's 600 foot inches, and we've been without oil for how long? And we're only pulling 6 amp. And that's the reason that, and this oil's got 15,000 miles on it. And I could be here all day. We're beginning to get a little smoke.
Don't touch that one, Richard. That's hot.
When I do this a lot, I end up looking like I have a wood stove. I got calluses on all my fingers. You gotta remember, I'm bohemian. We're slow learners.